Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us. We're here today with Prasanta Verma, author of a new book titled Beyond Ethnic Loneliness, the pain of marginalization, and the path to belonging. Born under an Asian sun, raised in the Appalachian foothills in the South, and now living in the upper Midwest, Prasanta is a writer, poet, editor, former debate coach, public health professional, and mom of three fabulous kids. Her essays and poetry have been published in numerous places online and in print. She wants to help us envision a world where we are all more socially connected and a little less lonely. Beyond Ethnic Loneliness is her first book. Prasanta considers herself a lifelong learner. When she's not writing, she's reading, walking, and exploring the beauty of the natural world. And she's also an alum of the Publishing in Color conferences. So I'm so glad whenever one of the alums from those conferences publishes a new book of their own, which is so wonderful to see. But you can learn more about the book and all about Prasanta at prasantaverma.com. So, Prasanta, many congratulations on this accomplishment, and thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Brian. It's delightful to be here. It feels like I'm coming full circle too after that.
Well, we were just talking beforehand about how much of a journey it is to get published. It's not an easy thing, and it takes quite some time. So
Mhm.
it means a lot of perseverance, a lot of hard work, and you did it. So that's a wonderful thing.
Thank you. Yeah, it was quite a journey but attending your conferences was a huge part of my journey. So thank you, Brian.
Oh, certainly. It was my pleasure. I'm so glad that it worked out. Um, is there anything else that you want people to know about you than what I kind of touched on there?
Well, yes, one thing I'd like people to know is that I love to drink chai. And yeah, I'm a very big fan of chai. And it's important to know that when people are saying chai tea, it's actually not chai tea, it's just chai because the word chai actually means
Means
tea.
tea, yeah.
So, so yeah, we don't go around saying, I want coffee, coffee, right? So it's like, so I just want people to know, very important. Chai tea is not chai tea, it's chai.
So
Yeah.
we have a couple of different areas we want to discuss, but the first one is your new book, and as I mentioned, the title is Beyond Ethnic Loneliness, the Pain of Marginalization, the Path to Belonging. So can you tell folks about, how this particular book came about?
Yes, of course. So, well, one of the ways that it came about was my own personal experience growing up in the United States and living as a minority. My family immigrated from India and we ended up living in a small town in Alabama. And so that was part of my formative experience was living in this place as an ethnic minority. And the second thing was my interest and research in loneliness and social connection. I have a background in public health. And I was personally interested and concerned about loneliness and social connection and how isolated we are in American culture, but especially how it affects people of color and immigrants and ethnic and racial minorities. And those are some of the things that were the impetus for writing this book.
And boy, didn't the pandemic just accelerate all of that in a bad way?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And then I think then the focus was on, different ethnic and minority groups and it seems to come in cycles, but it's always there. It's always part of our experience.
So, as you know, we have many aspiring authors in our audience. Can you share a little bit about how you work with your agent, Barb Bruce, and get a book deal?
Yes, absolutely. So, well, you mentioned earlier that I'm an alum of Publishing in Color, and so I have to mention that. So I want to say thank you, Brian. And I really mean that because I went to my first Publishing in Color conference. I think it was 2020 or 2021. It was online. And at that first one, I was just really more of an observer and a learner and kind of figuring out how things go. And by the time I enrolled again the next year, I was prepared. I had my proposal, I had a one sheet, I had signed up for all these one-on-one meetings with editors and publishers. And that is how I got connected actually to my agent was through Publishing in Color through a one-on-one meeting. And I shared with her my one sheet and I had even shared that with other editors too who were interested in the project. And that really helped to get things rolling along. And it just moved from there, and that's how I got to work with Barb. She signed me on, and then it didn't happen instantaneously, though. It was like another year
Wow.
before I got, the proposal even more ready and worked on platform and other things before it was ready to actually send out. So it's a long haul and it's a lot of work, but perseverance, right? And it's worth it.
Barb had to be great to work with. I really enjoyed working with her in the conferences.
Yeah, she's been fabulous. And I feel blessed, tremendously blessed to have her as an agent and to be connected. And, I never thought, to be honest with you, Brian, would I ever even get an agent, right? You don't know. You try, you go for it, but honestly, there are people still trying for years and years to get an agent. So the fact that that happened is just a gift. And I'm filled with gratitude for that. So,
And your
that's just amazing
and
to
your
me.
publisher is IVP, right?
Yes.
Which,
Yeah.
presented at, I think, every single one of the Publishing in Color conferences that I ever produced. So they're a good connection. I hope that's gone well in terms of your work with them.
Oh, it's excellent. They've been wonderful to work with. So yeah, I met them at a different conference for the first time, and then just continued to, you know, um, keep in touch and keep that relationship going. And so they've been amazing.
Good, good. So one of the marketing elements I work on with authors and entrepreneurs is their elevator pitch.
Mhm.
And I tell them that they need this in order to have conversations with people like agents and editors and as part of the book proposal. So I suggest they make it brief and to the point. What was the short version of your elevator pitch that you used to get your book deal?
Okay, so because you sent me this question in advance, and thank you, because so I actually looked it up and I actually copied it down so I could read you
Good,
this is my
good.
exact elevator pitch that I used in my proposal for this book. And here's what it is. Does it seem people of color are consistently talking about race? People of color feel marginalized and alienated. And with increasing loneliness and disconnection in the United States, a sense of belonging has never been more urgent. This book guides the reader along a path of understanding the loneliness that people of color experience.
That is
That's
excellent.
it.
That is excellent. So, just to analyze it a little bit in terms of, how it stacks up against what I recommend for people. First of all, you present the problem.
Hmm.
Secondly, you present a solution.
Hmm.
Third, you point out who the target audience is. Fourth, it's very concise. And fifth, it's very clear.
Yeah.
You
Thank
know,
you. Yeah.
and so those are in any kind of business. I mean, if people can accomplish that in saying what they're doing and why somebody should care, I mean,
Yeah. And I mean, it takes time to do that. It really does. And it sounds easy to say it, but honestly, it does take a lot of time, trial and error, and making it short and to the point.
yeah.
So yeah, it's a lot of work. It's a lot of
And
work.
it's difficult for everyone, whether it's a
Yeah.
big corporation or a single individual, author. It's not an easy thing. And so it's really good that you worked on it and got feedback. And anyway, so I love when I do an interview for a book and I get to read from endorsements that some of my other author friends have given it. So I want to read a couple of those. This one is from Quantrilla Ard, who says, before reading this book, I had never thought to give myself permission to connect my ethnicity with loneliness, even though I experienced it in palpable amounts. So personally speaking, I really love it when a book expresses something that I'd been feeling but was unable to articulate. And it seems like your book does that.
Yeah, thank you, Brian. Yeah, that was such a kind review. I really appreciate that. Quantrilla, she's been a wonderful, wonderful supporter too of the book. I really wanted to give language to this experience of ethnic loneliness. That was actually one of my goals. And the fact that it came across was tremendously rewarding because, we talk about this feeling from a different point of view. I really wanted to centralize the internal experience of loneliness, ethnic loneliness, and give voice and language to those dynamics. So I'm really grateful that that came across. And I've had other people come to me and say, this names my experience. So it's super rewarding.
Well, it's like one of those kinds of things that's there, but oftentimes unspoken.
Yeah, and we use different terms, like we talk
Yeah.
about discrimination or we talk about racism, but what is this internalized experience? What is it how can we dissect it and name it even more? So that's kind of what I was trying to do.
Good. So here's something from Terence Lester's endorsement. He says, Beyond Ethnic Loneliness is a moving read for any person of color who has silently carried the burden of isolation, invisibility, and marginalization. So is that who you would say the target audience is? Sounds like from what you told me before.
Yes. Well, as you know, one thing I've learned through the conferences and through book publishing is that your book really needs to have a target audience. You need to have a defined audience for your book. It can't be just everybody. So the book's target audience is definitely the primary audience, people of color. However, I will say that there is a large secondary audience too, but I speak primarily to the person of color in this book. But there is another audience here, and that is the white reader, the white majority reader, who's kind of looking over the shoulder and reading this, and they are coming and saying, I want to give this to my other white friends to read because it's really helped me understand what my other friends, my, people of color and my ethnic minority friends are going through. So that it would be the secondary audience.
I mean, I can totally understand that. I mean, as humans, it's hard for any of us to put ourselves in somebody else's shoes, right? You can't completely do that ever. But to the extent that, a book like this helps you develop empathy, right, for people that are not like you, I mean, I think that that's extremely valuable.
Yeah, and that's one of my hopes and goals is that we grow in empathy for each other and that this book kind of pushes us further along that road.
Hmm. Hmm. So sometimes I'm a little critical of books that will analyze an issue or talk about the history of an issue, but don't really say much about the question, so what do we do about it?
Yeah.
And so I'm really glad to say that your book addresses that. You devote almost half the book to a section called So What Can Be Done? So first of all, congratulations on that. Thank you for that. Can you talk about what some of the suggestions are that you offer?
Yeah, thank you. It was really important to be practical because there's a lot of problems in the world and
Yes.
we can name them all, right? But you know what can we do about it? That was really important to be practical and say, there are some things that we can do. So, I mean, one of the things I think number one is healing. So primarily speaking to the person of color, heal from your trauma, process your experiences and address those internal narratives that you have of disbelonging. So name it and process it, go through healing. The other thing I would say is to share your stories. Now, somebody asked me how. How do you do that? How do you share your stories? Well, there's two things I would say. Number one is ethnic minorities, we share our stories with each other because we know the value and power of storytelling and how it builds empathy. But for ethnic minorities, it does something more too. It kind of builds a collective experience, a collective memory. So sharing our stories is important that way for community building and camaraderie and such. But also, this is then to the secondary or target reader providing a place for ethnic minorities to share their stories, which is something you're doing here as an example, Brian, on your podcast. When you have books about faith and justice and elevating that minority voice that doesn't necessarily have a platform. So for that other secondary target reader, that's a way that they can participate in this is providing that platform to share stories and making that happen. And then number three is considering the roles that we have in our community organizations or churches. How can we support ethnic minorities in the groups that we're part of, in the churches that we're part of? And in my book, I list a whole list of practical ways that we can be part of that and participate in helping ethnic minorities feel like they belong.
Cool. I really love the practicality of it. That
Thank
really
you.
showed through, and I think makes the book, much more valuable, quite frankly, for whoever reads it.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
And also
Yeah, I'm
hopefully
just,
has a long tail, you know what I mean, in terms of book
yeah.
sale, because it's going to stay relevant. I mean,
And that's what I hope. I mean, I think that it's not it's not what, it's one of those, I think long term, it's not trendy. It's because
I,
we're going to be living with this problem for a long time. And
yeah.
when I say problem, it's not really, I should not use that word. It's not negative. This is just the reality of our society. We're going to be a non-white majority in 2045. So this problem is not going away. We're going to have to learn how to live with our neighbors. Better as we keep going forward.
Well, speaking of which, I love the title of one of the chapters in the second half, which is called "A Better Country," which is a very important issue for me. It's one of the reasons why I started How to Heal Our Divides, and some of the other things I've been doing. Um, in one sense, our country was founded on and has been known for, compared to many countries, for its ability to foster immigration. But we all know that that was never really completely true. And quite frankly, it seems to be getting worse. What is your perception of all of that?
Mhm. Yeah, that's a really good question. So, as you mentioned, the United States, interestingly, the United States has more internationals, people that were born in another country than any other country in the world, which is fascinating. And that really started in 1965 with the Immigration and Nationality Act, when they opened up the doors to Asia and Africa and more international migration. But we have such a checkered history with migration and immigration. We are still struggling with it. And so, as I mentioned, the non-white majority in 2045, it's not going away. In fact, it's going to keep getting even more. We're rubbing shoulders more and more with each other of more ethnic backgrounds and more multiracial groups too, like multi-ethnic groups. So, the problem is going to be with us, but the U.S. has been sending a dual message. So on one hand, we have the most number of immigrants in the United States, and we have a message on the Statue of Liberty that says, bring me your tired, bring me the masses. But on the other hand, we're sending this message of, no, don't come here, or no, you're not welcome here, or go back to where you came from. So we've had this dual message, which leads to our sense of disbelonging and confusion and that feeling of uncertainty that we experience as ethnic minorities. So we got to contend with this message and figure out how we're going to unify that message or come to some sort of better understanding.
So, thinking of this on a national scale, do you have any specific suggestions?
Hmm. Yeah, this is a long-term thing, and I have a couple things I would like to mention. So first of all, I think we need to normalize talking about this issue. Let's talk about ethnic loneliness. Let's talk, let's bring it into the national forefront of the conversation and keep talking about it. And that's why I think sharing our stories is so important. That's why I put it in the book, because I think it's vital. So normalize talking about loneliness and ethnic loneliness because our society is experiencing an epidemic of loneliness. So,
Mhm.
so that's one thing. The second thing that I would like to see, it's kind of related to that. And I would like us to see not only that we're normalizing talking about these issues and we're bringing them to the forefront and pushing the conversation forward, but I would also like to see how are we addressing our social health? So we talk about mental health, we talk about physical health. How are we addressing our social health? And our social health is our connection with each other. What is our social well-being? We are so isolated. And so in terms of training our medical professionals and in terms of our local health department initiatives at the community level, are we seeing initiatives to address our social health? So those are some things that we can do on a bigger scale to address this issue.
Very cool. Very cool. So, what would be like the one thing that you'd want people to take away from your book?
Oh, the one thing.
The one
Okay,
thing.
the one thing. Okay, the one thing is normalize talking about ethnic loneliness. Let's normalize it. It's not taboo. Let's not hide from it. Let's bring it up to the forefront of our conversations.
And find
Normalize.
people to do that with.
Pardon?
Find people to do that with. For some people, that alone is a difficult challenge.
That's a really good point. So it goes down to so many things like yes, who is our community? And do you have someone to process your experiences with? Because that's super important. And then platforming other people and giving them the opportunity to talk and share about their experiences. But yeah,
Yeah.
I think that's the one thing is normalize it.
Hmm. So I'd like to shift gears a little bit and talk about the whole idea of finding your next calling. You're now an author, which means you're also an entrepreneur. What led you to want to do this craziness that took so long and so much work?
Yeah, we're all crazy, right? You know, writers are entrepreneurs, and I love that. Well, I love writing, first of all. I love writing. I love the written word, and I've been writing for many, many years. So that's just part of who I am. But also I think that you have this story, this kind of burning story that you want to share. There's a message that compels you to keep going and pursuing this long-term dream. So you have this fire in your belly, and that kind of makes you keep going and you want to push and go further. Um, so yeah, I think that's part of it. That's part of what compelled me.
Well, I think, that's what it takes, because it is such a journey, so much work, so much perseverance, so many no's that you
Yeah,
receive, right? I mean, all of us do, um, but especially authors.
right. Writers
Uh,
especially.
so
Yeah.
you've got to have the passion, to
Yeah.
push through all that.
Yeah, you do, and you need to love it. You need to love what you do. You need to be passionate about it because even after you write the book, let's say you get to this point, you're writing the book, you're going to be talking about this book for a very long time. So you have to really be passionate about it and love it because you will be kind of married to it. You
Yeah, yeah, immersed
really.
in it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what kind of advice do you have for people who are just getting started that haven't yet published their first book?
I have several things I would recommend. Number one is find a writing community and get yourself immersed with other writers, people who understand what it means to write and be a writer, because it's a whole different world and your friends are not going to understand that. They're not going to know what it feels like. They have what it means to be a writer. Writers know. Other people don't know what it's like. So have that community around you and start, talking and learning. The other thing I would say is submit your work. Start submitting your work, start getting it out there, get some bylines, start practicing writing and make sure your work is getting out there. But I think another thing I would say, Brian, is believe in yourself. Believe in yourself because you will be faced with many rejections. It is up and down, a roller coaster ride. So believe in yourself and listen to your instincts. And because that's really sometimes the only thing that's going to keep you going.
Amen. So I realize you're in the middle of a book launch, but I have to ask you if there's any future plans, whether it's books or other things that you can talk about.
Yeah, I'm actually thinking about another book idea. I'm researching it now, so I'm working on that, developing another book proposal and idea that I hope will also come to fruition as well. So working on it.
Well, please keep us posted.
Thank you. Yeah, I will.
Maybe time for another
Absolutely.
interview before we know it.
Yeah. Hopefully. That would be
So,
amazing.
so again, congratulations, Prasanta. I'm so glad about the success of this book, and wish you all the best. Going forward. Again, the title is Beyond Ethnic Loneliness: The Pain of Marginalization and the Path to Belonging, from IVP. Go check out Prasanta's website at prasantaverma.com. So, thank you for joining us, and again, many congratulations.
Thank you, Brian. It's been delightful to be with you today.